Om Shri Sai Ram. I begin with 3 Sai Gayatris as usual. Om. 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 Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahe Sathya Devaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahe Sathya Devaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahe Sathya Devaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. My most loving pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved Bhagawan, who is here with us today, listening to the Satsangh that happens every Sunday, and blessing us for so much more every Sunday. And loving Sai Ram to everyone who's assembled here for another evening of bliss. And here we have with us another Swami's daughter, Sister Shailaja Vishwanath, who is going to be recounting her experiences as a student as well as a devotee, as Swami's daughter with us today. Sister Shailaja learned about Bhagavan in the year 1994 through the book Baba and I by the well-known devotee John Hislop. 5 years later, she was in Bhagavan's Institute as a student. In 1999, she joined the Sri Sathya Institute of Higher Learning, Anantapur Campus, for her MA in English Language and Literature. She was part of the bhajan group of the campus in those 2 years of stay. She was fortunate to sing before Bhagavan during Mahashivaratri and Akhanda Bhajans during this period. In November 2001, she received the gold medal for the MA program from Bhagavan's divine hands. Thereafter, she got married and also started working as a verbal trainer for MBA students. In 2007, she started blogging primarily as a parenting writer, recording her experiences as a new mother. Since 2018, she has been a blogging and social media coach, helping content writers and small business owners build their authentic brand in the digital space. Now, if you haven't guessed already with the similarities in their features and in their profile, Sister Shailaja happens to be the elder sister of Sister Sindhuja, who just spoke to her, shared her experiences with Bhagavan about a couple of weeks ago. And today we are here to listen to Sister Shailaja's experiences. The two sisters, blessed with a melodious voice, have been fortunate to sing in Bhagavan's presence on numerous occasions. But although they come from the same family, they joined the institute at the same time. I'm sure Bhagavan touched their lives in unique ways. And therefore, we are here today to hear Sister Shailaja's experiences and learnings at Bhagavan's lotus feet. Now, Sister Shailaja, of course, I knew her well as a student. I had joined the graduation then, and she had joined her master's at the same time. But I didn't know her on a personal level as a student. But all I knew about her, that she radiated serenity and calmness always around her. And apart from the mellifluous voice with which she helped us connect to Bhagavan each time she sang. And I'm not surprised today, as she runs a blog today, her calmness and her serenity is reflected even in the blog today. If you're interested in the blog, if you happen to be a business owner in the digital space, I recommend you surely check out her blog, which maybe I can attach later in the link. You will find the unique way that she approaches businesses. She helps new business owners, or rather startups, to approach their business with the value-based approach. It's a far cry from how people would rather advise others to go for exaggeration and rather, branding and marketing. She advises. It's almost Zen-like. her whole blog, her approach. She advises authenticity, of a complete contrast to the usual norm of businesses. So I recommend you check out later if you're interested. And here we are. I'm as eager as I am. I leave the platform for Sister Shailaja to recount her beautiful experiences with Bhagawan. Thank you so much for accepting to talk to us today, Sister Shailaja.
Sairam, my most humble pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, or as we call him lovingly, Swami. Thank you so much both to Venkatanna as well as Anu for this opportunity. And I'm following in the footsteps of Sindhuja and my brother-in-law Karthik and my cousin Karthik Ramesh. So I have very huge shoes to fill. But as always, I will leave the talking to Swami and hope that he speaks through me. As Anu very eloquently said, we both Sindhuja and I, of course, we are from the same family, so we do have shared experiences. However, there are many things that each of us go through, either as individuals or as a family, which impact us differently in different ways. So, in fact, she covered a lot of it, thanks to the fact that she also had 2 sessions. But what I wanted to talk about today, and I want to start with this because it kind of governs a lot of what I do, primarily in business, but also in life. And this was a dream that Swami came to me in, I think, about a year before I joined Anantapur, which was in 1999, so about 1998. So in that dream, and we are sitting in Sai Kulwant Hall. I think it was me, my sister, and my aunt, my Periyamma. And Swami comes up to us and he says, what do you want? He asks me, what do you want? And in the dream, I tell him, I don't know what to say. I'm at a loss for words because I'm not unable to believe that Swami is talking to me. And you will understand what I mean by this when I talk about an incident later. So I don't say anything. And then before instead of waiting for me to respond, he says this in Tamil, Keta kudupen, kekalyana nariyave kudupen. What that means is, if you ask, I will give. If you don't ask, I will give you much more than what you have asked for. And the reason this stuck with me all these years is because for me, asking doesn't come that easily. And I always used to wonder why. And I want to talk about, again, sticking to 1998, I remember, and we are living in Bangalore. And at that time also we were living in Bangalore. And we were living in this area called Mahalakshmi layout. There was this Veeranjaneya Swami temple. There's a huge Veeranjaneya Swami temple very close to our house. And I remember the Akhanda Bhajan that year by one of the Samithis was being held in the Veeranjaneya Swami temple. And I think the Samiti members knew my parents, so they asked if we would be willing to come and attend the bhajans, especially through the night. Because most of the time, it's through the night that you need more singers. Because through the evening and all the established singers would be singing, they'd be singing on the mic. But for the 24-hour bhajan to go on, you need singers through the night. And I remember attending that. And I think that was the first time that I actually sacrificed sleep. And for those who know me, that's a huge thing, because for me, I can't give up sleep. It's very difficult. But I remember when I sat through that entire night and I got multiple opportunities to sing, because I was among, especially on the ladies' side, I think there were only about 5 or 6 of us. So I think pretty much every hour I was getting to sing about 2 or at least 3 bhajans. And I remember the Samiti member at the end of the session coming up to me the next morning and saying, or next evening after the bhajan ended, saying, you will get an opportunity to sing before Swami. I know this, he says. And at that time, we were not even thinking about applying for Anantapur, getting into the campus or anything like that. So I thought, okay, wonderful. I mean, it'll be great if we get to sing in front of Swami, but I don't think it's actually going to happen. But how nice of her to actually come and say that. And as Anu mentioned, of course, I did join Anantapur, and since Sindhuja and I also have a very similar singing style, we were paired together. So as you may know, the girls' side always sings in pairs, where we don't sing alone. So it was a very natural fit for the 2 of us to sing together. And I remember, because it was an amazing opportunity to sing in front of Swami, the very first Akhanda Bhajan, that was in 1999. And I think the first bhajan we ever sang was Sri Ramachandra. But personally, I've always had an affinity towards Devi. And I'll tell you why this is important again. Because I think for me, and I think for a lot of the girls, especially on the campus, Swami being the mother has always been far more dominant than Swami the disciplinarian father. Swami the father exists, but for us, Swami, Sai Ma is always, more supreme, so to speak. So in 94 or 90, I think in 95, when we were in Kenya, in Nairobi, and I developed this abscess on my back. It was a pus-filled abscess, and it got consistently worse, over the days. And we had to finally, my parents had to finally take me to get a small surgical procedure done to remove the abscess. Had the abscess removed, and then even, sitting for too long was difficult. But at the time, we were also doing weekly bhajans at home. So every week we would have, every Thursday we would have bhajans at our house. And I remember this one bhajan, which was about a week or so, I think, after the abscess was removed, and I was sitting on the chair. I could not sit down. I was sitting on the sofa, and I was singing this bhajan. And at that moment, I know it may sound dramatic, but at that moment, I could feel the pain leaving me. It was as if and I remember the flower fell, from the photograph when I was singing. So for me, Devi has always been a very, very powerful force in my life. And as I have mentioned to Anna, so this is not the Devi bhajan I sang at the time, but this particular Devi bhajan is very close to my heart. So maybe Anna could play that.
Just a moment.
Parthishwari Jagat Janani, Parthishwari Jagat Janani, Jaya 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 He Sai Janani, Jaya 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 He Sai Janani, Parthishwari Jagat Janani, Veda Kalamai Devi Bhavani, Veda Kalamai Devi Bhavani, Nada Vidyamai Narayani, Nada Vidyamai Narayani, Karuna Sadani, Karunamai Ma, Sharanam Sharanam Sai Ma, Jaya 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 He Sai Janani, Jaya 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 He Sai Janani, Parthishwari Jagat Janani.
So, like I said, Devi is a very important, an integral part of my life, especially when it comes to Swami. So we now come to 2001. This was towards the end of my final year. And as students know, we always want that final year interview with Swami. And I remember we had gone to Puttaparthi, Prashanthi Nilayam, I think in February, mid-February for Shivaratri. And we were hoping, and I remember our teacher saying that, final year students, please pray to Swami so that he will grant us an interview. And as usual, Swami would keep us hanging. We would turn up for every darshan, especially the girls seated right at the front, or our warden or our principal would ask Swami, and we would never get a very clear or definitive answer. And then I remember on the morning of 19th of February 2001, Swami sent a message to the hostel warden of our campus saying that he would grant an interview. But here is the really interesting thing that happened. He said everybody should come. So at first, she understood that to mean all the final year students should come. Swami said, no, everybody, whole campus, all of you should come. And usually the final year interview is held inside the mandir. Now, if you've been inside the mandir, you know how it is. It's fairly narrow. So there's about 3 rows of girls can sit on one side, 3 rows of boys can sit on the other side, and then there is that strip in the middle where Swami can walk down, the path where Swami can walk down. So we were wondering, how are, close to 500 of us going to fit into that room? I mean, only Swami is going to be able to make this possible. But when Swami says you can't say no. So I remember the principal and the dorm, the hostel warden coming and saying, we have to make this happen. So all of you get ready. And I remember this was such a tiny thing that went through my mind at that time. And he had scheduled the interview for the afternoon darshan, during the afternoon darshan time, around 1:30 or 2 o'clock or something. And I remember when we were getting ready, we had lunch, we went back to the dorm, we were getting ready. And at that time, when I was combing my hair, I was thinking, I better make sure my hair is neat, because if I get Pada Namaskar from Swami, and if he blesses me, I don't want his hand to get caught in my hair. So think of the way my mind is going. First of all, in that huge crowd, in that in that small space, where am I going to get Pada Namaskar? It's going to be a miracle to fit all of us in there. But I don't know why this thought just ran through my mind. And it disappeared after that. I just went through my mind, it disappeared. And then we went in, and given that we were such a huge number, there was no possibility of, first row, aisle, we were all packed together, literally, as they say, like sardines in a can. We were packed together. We were just trying to make sure that all of us got space. Just that the final year students were asked to sit closer to the front, that's all. But even then, I was somewhere in the middle. I was not towards the front of the line. I was not towards the sides. Nowhere that Swami could. And plus, remember, this was Swami who was going to speak to us also. So there was also a desk. I don't know if you can see the picture. So that's actually from the interview. There was a table from behind which Swami was going to speak. And then there was a podium for the hostel warden to stand and do the translation of Swami's thing. And we waited, and Swami walked in. And when he walked in and he started talking, and as always, Swami started with his discourse, gave us, advice, told us about how we were going out into the world, what are the responsibilities that we needed to undertake as messengers of Sai, and especially as daughters of Sai, because it's not just messengers of Sai, as daughters of Sai, what is it that you need to present to the world, because you are taking this name of Bhagawan to the world. So you have a very huge responsibility. And towards the end, and we were all pretty much expecting, time for Aarti and things like that. Suddenly he turned to the principal, Jayama madam, and he said, who has got 5 points? He said, I remember the GPA was, 5 point, the 5-point average. Right? And so Jayama ma'am said, Swami, and then he repeated 5 points. And then a few girls got up, few of us got up. And then he said, no, throughout 5 points, who has got? And then slowly girls started sitting down, and pretty much I was the only one left standing, and I felt really awkward about it, but I was standing there in the middle of this huge crowd. And Swami looked at me and, 5 points, he said. I just nodded my head. I couldn't say anything, obviously, from the distance. And then he said, PhD chestava. I remember I was finishing my MA. And again, remember the first dream where Swami asks me a question and I don't know what to say. I'm completely tongue-tied and I'm just standing there blinking. And this is so ridiculous because, I remember in high school, I got the best speaker award or something like that. And here I'm not able to put 2 words together. And I just said, Swami, I didn't even repeat it. Then he said, Pelli Chesko, he said. He didn't wait for me to respond again. He said, PhD Sestava. And then he said, Pelli Chesko means get married. And then Jayama madam, that is the principal, reached out and said, "Pelli nichayamaipoyindi, Swami." That means her marriage has been fixed. So just 2 weeks before this, before the final year interview, I had come home because there was an alliance for marriage, and had met the boy, and the families had met, and we had decided that we would start the marriage arrangements and things like that. So Swami said, I think he said, your recommendation chalu or something like that. I don't remember the exact phrase. Something like, I know everything. You don't have to tell me. So that's what he told Jayamama. Then he said, Bangaru. He said, now again, these are all dangerous words. Just because Swami says Bangaru doesn't mean that, he's calling you a golden child. That means he's going to beat you in every way possible. And we'll understand that as well as I talk about the incidents further. And then and the most amazing thing happened. He started waving his hand and he materialized a watch. And when he held it out, it was a watch made of gold, and it had diamonds. It had 6 diamonds embedded into the wrist, which is the same one that I'm wearing now. And then everybody's from the back, especially girls who were sitting behind me, started pushing me forward. Again, I was frozen. I didn't know what to do. I went there, and the first thing that happened was I went there and I didn't. What do I do when Swami is holding out a watch? Now, typically, if it's a ring or a chain, he will just, he'll either drop the chain into your hand or he'll put it around your neck. But for girls, I have no idea what he does. And I remember I went up there, and the first thing that struck me was I should get Pada Namaskar, because I think around this time was when Swami was beginning to say, I'm going to stop giving Pada Namaskar. So I said, okay, this is the opportunity. Let me get Pada Namaskar. And that is when that, the thought that had occurred in the morning shot through my head again. Remember how that tiny thought popped into my head, and even that Swami managed to satisfy. And then I went down, I took Pada Namaskar, and I stood back up. And then he actually tied it around my right wrist. And at that time I thought, why did he tie it on the right wrist? I'm right-handed, so he should have tied it on the left wrist. Then I had a watch on my left, and okay, so Swami was, so how our minds, go in all kinds of directions. But I was incredibly overwhelmed with this. And I remember a couple of my teachers coming up later to me and saying, when Swami said PhD Chestava, you should have said, yes, Swami. He said, it's not like I didn't want to. I literally didn't have the words coming out of my mouth. And so that is one incident which is very clear in my mind. So, the fact that Swami was there and he gave all this, and many years later is when I actually understood a lot of what happened during that particular incident. Now, in 2001, in March, or rather I would say in April, after we finished college and we went back home, I remember my parents and we went to Vrindavan. I think at that time Swami was coming over to Vrindavan, and we took the horoscopes, my horoscope and my husband's horoscope. And Swami was, I think my cousin Karthik was sitting in the boys' side, and he had also the horoscopes with him. He had the horoscopes with him. Swami came for darshan. He picked up the horoscopes, and while he was picking them up, they were about to fall. They were about to fall, but he turned his hand and he caught the horoscopes. He caught the horoscopes, and then he put it among his bunch of letters which he was holding in his other hand. In subsequent years, I think about a year or so later, Swami appeared in a dream to my mother, and he said, do you remember when, and this was during a very troubling time in my life, which is what I will speak about next. And it is truly a miracle that, we survived that, and we've completed 20 years of marriage this year. And I remember about a year later when Swami appeared in my mother's dream and said, do you remember how the horoscope slipped, but I caught it? Do you know what that means? He said, this marriage could have fallen apart, but as long as I am there, nothing will ever happen to them. I am there, isn't it? You have to believe that. You have to trust me. And I keep remembering this whenever I sit down to pray, and I don't know what to ask for. And then Swami says, if you ask, I will give. But if you don't ask, I will give even more. So I don't know what to ask for. I never know what to ask for when it comes to prayer. So by October 2001, my sister visited me. So I had gotten married, we had moved to Chennai. I was working at the time. My sister visited me, and then she went back home after meeting me. And then she, I think that was during the Dashara break, because she was still in college, right? So she had come down just for the Dashara break. She went back home and she told my mother that something is wrong. She is not, she's not normal, not in terms of being abnormal, but something is wrong, something is not right. So she's extremely irritable, she's snapping at me for very tiny things, and this is not at all like the Shailu that I know. And then what happened was, I think about a week or so after that, I remember my aunt called me on the phone. My aunt lives in Chennai. She called me on the phone, and then I responded to her in a very mysterious and cryptic way, saying, "Thank you for ruining my life," or something like that, which took my aunt, by surprise. And she also called my mom and said, again, something is wrong. We don't know what it is, but something is wrong. And November of 2001 was my convocation ceremony, and I had also learned that I was getting the medal for the MA. So we were anyway supposed to go to Prashanti Nilayam at the time. So my parents decided that they would come down, they would take me for the convocation. And then it was decided between my parents, my husband and my in-laws, that given that something seemed to be off, that I would be going back with my parents to stay with them for some time, maybe to just figure out what was going on. What happened was, I remember this was on the evening of the 22nd, night of the 22nd. So after the convocation ceremony, my husband had come for the convocation ceremony, and then he left by the next bus or something like that, the evening bus. That night, on the night of 22nd, I woke up from bed, and we were staying in one of the blocks inside the ashram. I woke up from bed, I dressed up, I wore a full sari and everything. And then I walked out of the room. I walked past the Ganesha temple right at the entrance, walked out of the ashram and walked quite some distance down the road. And this was around, I think, 1 a.m. in the morning. So everything was still. And I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing, who I was in search of. And then some force guided me back to the ashram. And while it guided me back to the ashram, it also sent me back to one of my teachers' homes. One of my teachers was living in the ashram, or rather, she has a house in the ashram. So I went there and I knocked on her door, and she was obviously surprised to see me at 1 in the morning. And she didn't question anything. She knew instinctively that something was wrong. And then she took me by the hand. She took me back to where my parents, and remember, this was before the age of cell phones. So my parents were just sitting up in bed wondering what has happened, where has she gone? We have no idea. And then my teacher has brought me back all the way. So Swami has been there every second of that time. And then when I went back home with them, it was discovered through, again, one of Swami's devotees, who was also a doctor, and he is a psychiatrist who lives in Chennai. He and his wife are both psychiatrists. That I was suffering from both clinical depression and bipolar disorder. Now, that at that time, bipolar disorder was also called manic depression. So you will have, episodes of being absolutely high and episodes of being absolutely low. So it's basically it's a form of mental illness. Now, today, people are surprised when I tell them that I had mental illness 20 years back. I had bipolar disorder 20 years back, because as per medical science, there is no proven cure for bipolar disorder. There is no proven cure. People say you can only manage it with medicines, you can manage it with therapy, but you can't completely come out of it. So nobody believes me, especially people who know me now, when I tell them that I had bipolar disorder. And for every person who asks me, what was it that helped? I say the first thing or first person that helped was Swami. Swami was the person, because without Swami, I would not be sitting here today. I would not be sitting here today talking to each of you, because during that really severe phase of mental illness, I actually attempted to take my own life. And Swami has saved me not once, but twice, 2 occasions when I tried to take my life. In some way, I remember, because I was alone at home at the time in Chennai. And just as I was about to take this extreme, the watchman rang the doorbell. He rang the doorbell. And at a very odd time, at like 10:30 in the night or something. Why would a watchman ring the doorbell at 10:30 in the night? So obviously at that time I was alone at home. I would not open the door, but something stopped me. It's like somebody is watching. So I better not do anything which will, raise suspicions. And now I realize it must have been Swami. It's just in the shape of the watchman. It was actually Swami coming there to stop me from doing any of these things. So I think a day or two after that, that is after the birthday was over, after the birthday celebrations, my mother approached Jayama ma'am, who was the principal of the time, and said that something is wrong. When we still didn't know, right? We still didn't know. We had not yet gone back home, and said that she's suffering. She's suffering through something. We don't know what it is. Can you ask Swami what needs to be done? And Jayama ma'am had a very soft spot for me. She was not only a hostel warden, she's not only a principal, she was also one of my teachers, because she was one of the English literature teachers when I was studying. So she asked me to come and sit next to her at the front of the girls' block in Prashanti Nilayam. And there's no guarantee that Swami will stop in front of you, talk to you, even if you're Jayama ma'am, even if you're the principal of the campus. But that day, I remember, Swami came straight to Jayama ma'am, and Jayama ma'am started saying, she's not well, Swami. Swami looked at me directly into my eyes, and he said only one word. He said, disappointment. Now, if anybody else hears it, he may think, okay, Swami is calling you a disappointment. But what I realized much, much later was, and this is something that has come to me in so many forms over the years, when do we have disappointments? When we have expectations. So if you have expectations, you will always have disappointments. And it is not expectations of other people, expectations of how life should unfold. It is expectations of yourself. So remember, I had just been married. So 2001 May, I got married. 2001 June, I started working. I wanted to do everything. I was so confident. Okay, I'll do everything. I'll be a working woman. I will manage my home. I will not hire a maid. I will do everything on my own. And this was a new house, first time ever that I'm going to be managing a house of my own. I don't know why I had this brilliant, image of myself as a person who could do everything, but I did it. So and the job that I was doing, which was a trainer for MBA students, well, MBA aspirants, I should say, meant that I had to be at work at 6 a.m. Now I said, 6 a.m. is no problem. We were getting up at 5 a.m., 4:45 a.m. every day in Anantapur. So what's the big deal? 6 a.m. is very easy. I'll get up at 4:30 a.m., make breakfast for the household, go finish my class and come back. 6 to 8 was the class. But as a result, what was happening? I was sleeping only around 12 a.m. or 12:30 a.m. and then getting up at 4:30. So 4 hours of sleep. On top of that, this. And I was also at a space where I didn't know how to say no. So when my boss would say, there are some extra sessions today, there is a substitute session we need a teacher for, would you be available? Yes, I'm available, 100%, I will be there. No. So I was trying to say, okay, Swami students should be ready to do everything, come what may. We should not say no. Many years later, of course, you understand that is not a very practical way to go through life, but that was what had happened. So what happened was lack of sleep, lack of a sense of boundaries, a sense of understanding where we should be spending our time, led to all of these things completely building up. So when I got back home and we started consulting with this doctor, who was who I said was also a Swami devotee. So he said, I will put you on, and he told my parents this, given the extent of her, because by the time my parents found me, brought me back home, I was in a state of having hallucinations. So I would assume that there were people out there. If I step out of the door, there are people out there, waiting to, find me and kill me, because, and hallucinations have no basis in logic. And at that time, he gave my parents a choice. Given how serious a situation is, you can either get her admitted to a facility where she will be monitored 24/7, or you will have to do the monitoring. But of course, with Swami, we can take a chance. And my parents took the really bold decision of saying, we will manage her at home. And I'm very sorry to say, I've really troubled them in that phase when I stayed with them. For a child who was never troublesome, if you actually ask my sister and my parents, I think I've done my full quota of trouble I've given them in those 9 months when I was with them. And that's again interesting, 9 months. 9 months was how much time it took for me to get weaned off my medication. And I was having regular therapy sessions with the psychiatrist. So he would come and talk. And I remember half the time I would think, okay, this person is saying something. I don't know what he's saying. Let him talk. Maybe Swami, wants me to just smile at him and understand what he's saying. And I would just go with the flow. Around, I think 2 or 3 months into that time, and I was still, kind of flitting between hallucinations and reality. One of our neighbors, or rather a person who owns a store, he used to have a store 2 doors away from us, very close to the family. He said, I know a person, he's a pastor, he's a Christian pastor. He can, get rid of this devil who has possessed your daughter. So if you're willing to, take the chance, we will take her to that person. We'll get rid of this devil. She will be back to normal by tomorrow morning. Now, my parents didn't want to say no because he's a very genuine person, very soft-hearted. So we said, okay, what's the worst that can happen? We'll go there, figure out what this is all about, and come back home. I went there, and I remember I remember this very, graphically. It was very overwhelming for me because I walked into this room. First of all, it is a very dark and slightly dingy room. And there was this person yelling at the top of his voice, then the way they try to drive away spirits, and he was saying, the blood of Jesus will be upon you. And that very sound of it was scaring me out of my wits, but I didn't say anything. Then because this person had specifically recommended this chap, then after he had finished that session of his, he called us aside and he said, he listened to my parents and he listened to what was my problem. And then he said, I can cure you, but I only need one thing from you. In the next couple of months, we will have regular sessions. But in that time, you will have to forget the God that you believe in. You will have to forget the God that you believe in and only stay committed to whatever I'm saying. So who is the God that I believe in? That is Swami. Now, here's the interesting thing. That was a phase when I didn't know who I was, where I was. I was hallucinating, but one thing was very clear, and that was Swami. Swami was going to be with me, come what may. So when he said that, and I came back home and I told my parents, I cannot give up Swami. He's talking about 2 months, 2 seconds, I cannot give up Swami. What is he saying? And that pretty much put an end to that possibility, thank goodness. And over the next 8 to 9 months, slowly my psychiatrist started tapering my medicines down, therapy sessions down, and we started relying only on Vibhuti. Every day Vibhuti water, nothing else, only Vibhuti water. And by this time, my husband had got a job in Hyderabad, so he had moved to Hyderabad. So I was supposed to join him there. My mother decided to accompany me, and I think this was in May or June of 2002. To this new house in Hyderabad, just to help me get set up. And again, because I was getting out of this situation, so she wanted to be sure that I would be able to manage and things like that. I went there, and then a couple of months we were just getting settled in and things like that. And around that time, I think end of July or early August, my mother got the audition call back from the Brindavan Bhajan group. So they said that you have to be here in order for the thing to happen. Now my mother was torn. So should she stay with me or should she leave? And that night Swami came to her in a dream and he says, go, I will take care of her. So I will take care of her. And I remember my mother, when I was seeing her off at the station, she said, you have to start saying this from today. I am fine. So when people ask you, how are you doing? You don't say, I'm okay. I will be better soon. I will be fine soon. You start saying, I am fine, and start saying it with full belief in your heart. You have to believe that you will be fine. And here's the really interesting thing. She left, and then within a day or two, she had befriended a friend who stayed in the lane next to my house. So that auntie, I remember, became like a second mother to me. So whatever I thought I had learned to do as a householder, as a wife, when it came to cooking, I had forgotten everything thanks to this entire situation. So she taught me everything, right from things like, put the oil in the pan, put the mustard, wait for it to. So think about it. It's like you're teaching a child or teaching somebody how to cook from scratch. So again, the mother in Swami came to me in the shape of that lady. So I'm always overwhelmed when I think of this, how I've never felt that Swami is away from me ever, and I'm not sure if that is true of all Swami's girl students, because first of all, we get very, very limited access to Swami's physical form. We only get it when we come for darshan to Prashanti Nilayam or darshan to Kulwant, or even that is very unlikely. Sometimes, Swami may not turn up for darshan, but somehow Swami, I think, builds a great deal of reserves in us as students and as women to completely rely on him come what may. This is again, and this was, and post that, things started getting better. The important thing that happened was the watch never left my side, as you can see. But what started happening was, through that 9-month period, the diamonds which were on the strap kept falling. Now, the first time it fell, obviously I felt, I felt terrible. I've lost something. Then 6 diamonds were there. And slowly, one by one, all the diamonds disappeared. It was much later I realized it's not the diamond, it is die mind. So the more we allow the mind to die and therefore let go of the attachment to that diamond or whatever, is when we will truly be, we will be able to embrace what Swami says and what Swami does. And about midway through these last 20 years, I got this very powerful message, I think around 2015. And I remember mentioning this in a post on Facebook also around that time. Swami came to me in a dream again. And at the time, he told me, do you know why I put the watch on your right hand? Because then you will always do the right thing. You will always do the right thing when you are faced with a fork in the road, when you are faced with the decision, when you're having a dilemma of sorts, you will always do the right thing. That is why I chose the right hand for you. And Bangaru, as we all know, that first year post the thing, he's managed to completely, hammer every possible part of me out into the open. But the beauty about all of this is none of it actually made me doubt Swami. You can easily say, right? I mean, you're going through this kind of a situation. Where is your Swami? What is he doing? But think about the glory of Swami, that he's there. He's there irrespective of whether you think of him. I think that's the beauty of it. You don't even have to think of him. He's there. That's the thing. For example, in 2000, by 2004, end or rather middle of 2005, we had been trying for a child. And I remember visiting a number of doctors and going through a number of procedures. And finally, one procedure which was very, very painful. And then my husband said, is this really necessary? I mean, if a child is meant to be, will happen. Let's not put ourselves or put you through this kind of thing anymore. It's not worth it. And I remember my doctor, she had told me, you have to do these things, ensure that, you take your food at the right times, take these medicines. I remember she gave me some medicines also. I never took the medicines. The medicines were there. I bought the medicines, but I never took them. And at that time, I remember in November of 2005, I suddenly found out that, I was expecting. And when I went to see the doctor and she said, oh, you did all this, isn't it? Isn't that why you got pregnant? I said, no, I didn't do anything. I don't know what I did. Because in fact, we had told each other, forget about kids. It's okay if we don't have a kid. God will take care of us the way we are. So that child whom I have now is a miracle in more ways than one. I mean, she's an amazing child. But the important thing is, when we completely left it to Swami, when we said, it's okay, let God take care of it, let him take care of it. And then it just, it just manifested. 5 or 6 years later, 2006, she was born. 5 or 6 years later, 2011, I remember she was in preschool. She was in LKG or UKG. So around that time is when we were thinking about moving her to the first standard. And by this time, of course, the internet was abuzz, and we had all these, blogs and websites and articles saying, these are the schools you should apply for. This is the best school in this locality. Go check out the school. So number one, information overload. Then of course you're constantly wondering which school do I go to? And that night, on pretty much I think the next weekend, that for coming weekend, we were planning to go and visit a few schools in this part of the city where we were planning to move. Swami appeared in a dream. In the dream, he was driving the school van. He was driving the school van, which my daughter used to go by regularly. And I'm standing there at the gate, waiting to pick up my daughter. And I look up and I see Swami is in the driver's seat. Literally Swami in the driver's seat. And with the driver's seat, how is it? If you trust a driver, you should let him take care of it, right? You don't have to worry. You should not be navigating. Any driver will know that. You should not do backseat driving. I got experience of that as well. So, and then my daughter gets out from the van next to Swami. She's sitting next to Swami, interestingly, in the front, not in the back where, usually the kids are sitting. So she gets out, and then Swami says, she is my child. She is my child. I will take care of her education. Do not worry. I will take care of her education. That weekend, when we went and saw about 5 or 6 schools. And then when we went to the final school on our list, when we walked in, immediately I got this sense that, okay, this is the school that I think she should be in. But of course, I didn't say that out loud. I just thought it. My husband also really loved the school. He said it's beautiful, such wonderful campuses, such abundance of play area, because that's something he's very particular about. He says kids should have place to play and move and run. And then we got a call back. Getting a call back from that school is very difficult. For one thing, that school very clearly says we will not take recommendations from anybody. Okay, you may be a minister's son, you may be the prime minister's granddaughter, it does not matter. We will not take recommendations. And I remember we got the call back. Now, this was 2011 December. And we went for the interview. And my husband is very outspoken, which is fine, especially if you know him and understand him. For somebody who's totally new, it may come across as a bit, unusual. And I remember the principal looked at my daughter and she asked her, okay, what's your name? And my daughter told her name. And then he looked at us and he said, why do you want to choose this school? So I said, I'm really interested in, this culture of yoga and shlokas and human values that you're talking about. So my husband said, it's because I don't want her to be in any other school, especially my school, because I didn't like my school. And he named the school also. Now, at that moment, inwardly, I gasped. I said, okay, you should not be saying this to a principal of another school, whichever school it may be. But then immediately I remembered, okay, Swami said he'll take care, so I will leave it at that. And within 3 or 4 days, we got the call back from the school saying that she's been accepted. And I remember people asking us, what did you say? How did you get accepted? I said, we didn't say anything. We went there, she asked us 1 or 2 questions and that was it. 3 years later, they started having, these aptitude tests and evaluations and things like that for first standard. None of that was there when she entered. Again, Swami, every step of the way. In 2017, which is when we had just moved into our new home. We had done the Graha Pravesham, the puja and everything, and we had moved into this home. And I was feeling excessively tired. And I thought, okay, it's natural, during the house movement. And we had done a lot of running around for the interiors and, getting the puja done and things like that. And, but I was extremely tired and I didn't know what was happening. About 3 or 4 days after moving in, I discovered that I was again expecting. But this was not like the previous time. I was also in a lot of pain, which didn't obviously seem normal by any stretch of the imagination. Went for a couple of doctor's visits, went for scans, and about 2 or 3 weeks after they found out that I was pregnant, I was also told that I would lose that baby. They said. And I did. I lost that baby also. But what happened was, and I was consulting a doctor, close to this new house of ours, and she gave me some medicine. She gave me some tablets. She said, this will ensure that, whatever is there in the body will leave, so you don't have to worry. But things were only getting worse. Finally, I said, what? And this was about 6 weeks of the kind of, up and down torture. I was in bed all day, couldn't get up, couldn't do anything. And I was in a lot of pain, lot of suffering. And then I finally called my parents, and my father works in the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Medical Sciences in Whitefield. And I think around that time, or maybe just a little prior to that, is when I think the general hospital, or maybe after that, I'm not sure of the timelines, the general hospital also merged with this hospital. So my parents said, my mother said, why don't you come here, for a checkup? We'll meet with the doctor here, and we'll see what she has to say. Maybe she'll be able to. So I put all my faith in Swami. I said, let me just go there. So I went there, and I walked in, my mother was with me. We walked in, and we walked into the doctor's office. She looked at my history, and she said, everything the doctor has done so far is fine. But she says, you should not be feeling this kind of tiredness and this kind of thing. And she said, I want to send you for a scan. She sent me for a scan, and when the scan reports came back, she said, something is there, some blockage is there. And then she started, and then what happened, when I was getting up from the table, I lost balance and I was about to fall. And she said, something is wrong. Okay, don't go home. I was supposed to go back home the same day. So she said, don't go back home, wait and get admitted. As it turned out, my hemoglobin levels had fallen dangerously low. So I was, I was in a very, very serious situation. But because I was in Swami's hospital, imagine, no red tape, no paperwork, nothing. Because Seva is at the forefront of everything Swami's, doctors do. She immediately swung into action. She said, I will take you for the procedure. We'll do a procedure, and then we will make sure that the hemoglobin is, we will get a blood transfusion, we get it done. And even today, when I think about it, and while I remember thinking at the time, okay, Swami, you denied me the chance of another child, because again, the monkey mind plays. Swami said, I saved you from something much greater. Even if you had the child, you may have experienced loss in some other form. So I took care of the loss in this way so that you would be able to come out of it. And I remember this because, again, this was again in a dream that when Swami appeared to my mother, when I was really struggling with this mental illness, back in 2001. And my mother said, why, Swami, why are you putting her through this? Why, what has she done? So Swami says, I'm only giving that which she can tolerate. She can only, I will give her only that which she can tolerate. Do not worry. If I had given it to her as physical pain, she would not have been able to manage it. But she will be able to withstand this mentally. I guarantee it. That is what he said. I guarantee that he will be able to withstand, she will be able to withstand this particular endurance, this particular situation that she's going through. I now want to come to my business. Why? Because Swami plays a very huge role in it every single day of my life. And I really want to thank him for being there. So I started the business side of this in 2018. And my business, as Anu mentioned at the beginning, is to help other bloggers and content creators and small business owners build a very organic connection with their audience. So none of what I call the, hustle marketing tactics, none where you're chasing goals. There's no chasing. You do what you do, and then things will happen as and when it is ready for them to happen. So 2018, I started. And at that time, of course, I remember, signing up for so many marketing courses and so many people's newsletters, subscribing and reading up on all of these things. And 2 years into that, I said, what, I've had enough. I can't do this. I'm unable to understand, how to get people to buy from me, how to get people to understand who I am. I'm done. So by June of 2020, I said, I'm done. I'm done, Swami. I was literally in that place where I was like, Draupadi is like, I'm done. I put both my hands up and I said, I'm done. I'm taking a break for 2 weeks. When I come back after these 2 weeks, I'll just tell everybody, enough, my business is done. I'm shuttering it, and thank you for the ride, and let's move on. Towards the end of that time, Swami guided me, interestingly, through a link which a friend of mine sent me. She said, I really like the work that you do. I think you will identify with the way this person speaks and the way he teaches marketing. It's very different from what I've seen otherwise. So I found my mentor. I found my current business mentor. And every step of the way, I've noticed what he says and what Swami says are completely in alignment. So he talks about creating content from a space of service. So you do it from a space of service, not with an not with an expectation that a person will become a client or become a customer or become a buyer, but because you truly want to help that person. Do it from that space. And around that time is when I got in touch with one of the people who got in touch with me. She reached out and she said, I really enjoy your blog. I enjoy what you're talking about. And she happens to be one of Swami's students. She's an Anantapur Campus alumni. And she said, somehow I felt you were Swami's student. I don't know why, but I thought you were Swami's student. And I said, okay, this is so unusual. I mean, I have been connected to Swami's students, through Facebook because we're all friends and things like that. But nobody has actually worked with me from the business angle in this way. Similarly, in December of 2020, a lady reached out to me. So she's about, I think, 15, 20 years my senior. She reached out to me and she said, I really enjoy your work. I would like to hire you. But she said, I don't want this 1 hour session, 1.5 hour session. I want 4 hours with you. I want 4 hours. I want you to sit and explain your entire process. So I'll be able to figure out what works for me. In the very first session, about halfway into the session, she said, the reason why I started following you is because it reminds me of what my guru says, and that is help ever, hurt never. And then I said, is your guru Bhagawan Shri Sathya Sai Baba? She said, Sai Ram. Yes, he is. How do you know? I said, my guru is also Bhagawan Shri Sathya Sai Baba. And we have been in touch right through. And here's the really interesting thing. That was in December. In December is when she initiated that 4-hour session. From January, my business started going up. The business side of it, the visibility, the money, so to speak, everything started going up. April of 2021, I had my highest ever income month, highest ever in the last 20 years since I started working. I've never made that kind of money in my life. May 1st, when I woke up, Swami appeared in a dream and he said, now are you happy? Okay. And it sounded like such a thing. So now you have made money. Are you happy? And I said, no, Swami, it's not that I wanted money or anything. Why would you say that? He said, no, I want you to think about what is it that gives you happiness? What is that truly gives you happiness? Then I sat back and I thought, Swami, I do it in whichever way I can. And I feel this is a way to do it. And so I stopped worrying about money. I completely stopped worrying about money pretty much from May 1st, which is technically, as a business owner, it's a bit of a risky proposition because, when you have outflows and expenses and overheads to think about, you'll be constantly thinking, where will the money come from? Where am I getting the next, as a freelancer, especially, you don't have a paycheck. You don't have a sustainable. But here's the really interesting thing. May, June, and July, I've stopped worrying about money, and the money has come anyway. As an example, I used to charge a very nominal amount for what I call a clarity session. A clarity session is when a client reaches out and says, I just want to talk, just to get an idea if we're a good fit to work together. I used to charge a nominal amount, but I used to charge it thinking, see, if I give it for free, people won't take me seriously. They won't show up, then I'll be sitting there waiting, thinking, where is this person and all that. Swami said, stop charging for that. Stop charging for that, he said. So I stopped charging for that. That was in end of May or something. I stopped charging for that. And I started telling people, go ahead and book that free session whenever you want. 2 weeks ago, one of my long-term clients reached out. She said, I want to talk to you. And how do we go about this? Should I set up a session, paid session? I said, this particular thing won't take too much time. It's a very simple thing. You don't need a 1 hour session. Let's just book a free call and we'll get started. She booked a free call. And then 15 minutes later, my phone lights up with a message saying, I've transferred this much money to you as a token of appreciation. So all I'm trying to say is, even when we don't go, chasing the money or things like that, Swami just appears. And I want to end with this particular dream, and which led to also this bhajan, which I will talk about. This was, I think, a couple of years ago, or maybe a little before that. Swami appeared to me in a dream. And in the dream, we have to walk up a flight of stairs. And at the top of the flight of stairs, there's a garden on one side. And then there is an open boundary kind of area, balcony kind, veranda kind of area with a parapet wall. Swami is sitting on a parapet wall. and he's dressed all in white. One of my favorite visions of Swami is Swami in white. And then he looks at me and his eyes just light up as if he's saying, "Oh, it's you. You have come." It's that that sense of recognition. And then I go there, and for the first time I ask, I remember, because I don't remember ever asking before, "What do you want from me, Swami? What do you want from me?" So Swami says, "Before I answer that, I want to tell you something. You're not practicing your music enough," he said. And as that was the truth, I wasn't practicing enough. And then he started singing. It was a bhajan I had never heard before. He said, that last line, you should sing it sweetly. It should not come out, even though it is a high note, it should come, Hare. That's how it should come. So I said, "Oh, okay, Swami, fine." And then he starts giving me the entire lyrics of the song, the tune of the song. And anybody who knows me will know this. I'm not a composer. I'm not a lyricist. I can sing, but I can't do any of these other things. So I got the entire bhajan with the lyrics, with the tune directly from Swami. And then now he says, "Now I will answer your question. What do you want from me?" He says, "I want everything I want two things from you," he said. "Everything you do, I want you to do it from a space of love for me. Do it out of love for me. Okay. And the second thing is, do it with pure-hearted devotion. PhD. So PhD Chesdava is not the PhD that I was thinking about or what we usually think about. It is pure-hearted. Will you do all this with pure-hearted devotion?" What a question from the ultimate, guru, Sadguru of all. Of course, Swami, I will do this. And that is why even today, when somebody asks me, to do something, I remember these two messages from Swami. Every single morning, I remember this. And every single night, I go to bed with gratitude that Swami is there for us, even if we don't consciously think of him. So with that, I would like to end, and I have sent that bhajan earlier to Venkatana and Anu, so maybe we can listen to that bhajan.
Krishna Vasudeva Janardana Madhusudana Hare Ranganatha Hare Ranganatha Hare Ranganatha Hare Ranganatha Hridaya Vidhata Shri Ranganatha Hridaya Vidhata Shri Ranganatha Prema Swarupa Purnavatara Prema Swarupa Purnavatara Parti Vihara Shri Sainatha Parti Vihara Shri Sainatha Hare Ranganatha 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 Hare Hare Ranganatha Hare Ranganatha Hare Ranganatha Hare Hare
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Shailaja for sharing the experiences. It was just your talk was just reflected you. Simple, heartfelt, authentic, and full of devotion, and brimming with devotion. You took us I mean, I'm so touched that, Swami has, though we have heard Sindhuja's version, but Swami touches us in such individual ways, unique ways, and he makes us bloom to our own selves, right? I mean, to our fullest selves. And your experience of going through that pastors, I mean, that reminded so much of Swami's own witchcraft experience, where he was he was broomed with whatever the witches brew. I mean, yeah. It reminded me of Bhagwan's own experience, of what he underwent, and it's so beautiful. I mean, I think maybe that whole 9 months was a rebirth for you, just as you said, absolute rebirth. And thank you so much for touching upon the sensitive topic of mental health as well. It's so much many of us many of us even shy to talk about. And he so beautifully narrated how Bhagwan, the master healer, the divine healer, how he healed, not just healed you, I think he transformed you, isn't it? He just transformed you to another level, to be another being altogether. Wow. Thank you.
I would not be here today if it was for...
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anu, two things. First,
Yeah.
if I tell you something, you will realize that as we say, every satsang, the message is very customized, relevant to what is running in your mind.
Absolutely. True.
We had a Guru Purnima where we started the concept of letter writing for SSC children to write to Swami. Just as a thing, because there is a major issue of mental health challenges in Singapore amongst children. And it was intriguing to think, how do you develop this connectivity with Swami? Because at the end of the day, all you need is someone to talk to, right? And Swami is the perfect person to talk to. Today we had a meeting where we were only talking about mental health for 1 hour among the Palvikas gurus, right? And here you have coming boldly and talking about a subject and saying that it's just him who took care of everything. Just tells you that he's constantly watching everything that we speak, and he has the answer for you coming in very, very unique ways. So I have goosebumps whenever somebody touches a topic which is his way of giving you the answer in anyone, any messenger, any person who's able to relate to that message that came to them and translate it to us. Absolutely goosebumps listening to it. But again, I'm not going to, we've got 20 more minutes, which is not going to be easy for me to let you off without some live singing. Those two songs have taken us to a different realm. So let's try. All right.
I have one fan recommendation. Jagadisha Hare Jayo.
Okay. I need to know. Let me figure it out.
This is a bhajan I've heard Akka singing so many times in Bhagwan's
Jagadisha Hare Jayo or Jai Jagadisha Jai Paramisha?
No, Jagadisha Hare Jayo, I've heard you singing during Shivaratri, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's Jai Jagadisha, not...
Yeah, Jai Jagadisha. Yeah.
For Shiva, no?
Yeah.
Jaya Jagadisha, Jaya Paramesha, Jaya Jagadisha, Jaya Paramesha, Neelakanta Sada Shiva, Neelakanta Sada Shiva. Om Hari Om. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Sai Om, Devati Deva, Dina Dayana, Devati Deva, Dina Dayana, Chandrasekhara Shambho. चन्द्रशेखरा शम्भो नीलकण्ठ सदाशिवा नीलकण्ठ सदाशिवा जय जगदीश जय परमेश.
Adbhutam. Jaya Panduranga Prabhu Vittala. So it is going to be coming like this. So don't be surprised.
जय पांडुरंग प्रभो विठला जय पांडुरंग प्रभो विठला जगदोधारा हरि विठला जगदोधारा हरि विठला पांडुरंग विठला पंढरीनाथ विठला पांडुरंग विठला पंढरीनाथ विठला श्रीरमणी हृदयांतरंगा श्रीरमणी हृदयांतरंगा मंगलकर करुणांतरंगा मंगलकर करुणांतरंगा आश्रित दीन जनावनरंगा आश्रित दीन जनावनरंगा जगदोधारा हरि विठला जगदोधारा हरि विठला पांडुरंग विठला पंढरीनाथ विठला पांडुरंग विठला पंढरीनाथ विठला जय पांडुरंग प्रभो विठला.
There you go. So you got the list. If you can see the chat. So it's Chittaraja, Mangala Shubhakari, Nanda Ke Dulare Bhaiya. Why don't we do Nanda Ke Dulare Bhaiya first? And then we'll go.
Remember the pictures for everyone. Okay. नंद के दुलारे भैया नाचो 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 नंद के दुलारे भैया नाचो 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 मुरली गन श्यामा मोर मुकुट धामा मुरली गन श्यामा मोर मुकुट धामा नाचो 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 नंद लाला नाचो 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 नंद लाला स्वागतं कृष्णा कृष्णा शरणागतं कृष्णा स्वागतं कृष्णा कृष्णा शरणागतं कृष्णा आओ मेरे नैनों में आओ मेरे भजनों में आओ मेरे नैनों में आओ मेरे भजनों में सुंदर सुंदर गोपाला श्याम सुंदर साई गोपाला सुंदर सुंदर गोपाला श्याम सुंदर साई गोपाला अंतर्यामी गोपाला हृदय निवासी गोपाला अंतर्यामी गोपाला हृदय निवासी गोपाला नंद के दुलारे भैया नाचो नाचो नाचो. I want to share something about this particular bhajan. I remember when we learned it, my sister and I, in Anantapur, and we were hoping for a chance to sing it for Bhagawan during Akhand Bhajan. And I think we got to sing it in the morning slot of the Akhand Bhajan, that early morning 6 a.m. slot, as Swami was entering. So as a result of that, they started asking us to sing this bhajan very often on campus as well. After some time, my sister said, we really should sing other bhajans other than Nanda Ke Dunare Bhaiya, because it looks like we only know this bhajan. But it's a beautiful bhajan, no doubt. Okay, there was a list, she said.
No, so I think we'll go with popular votings. Bhagawan.
Okay. Bhagavan Tvadiya Charana. Oh God, I hope I remember the lyrics. Okay, I'll sing at least one verse from what I remember. That's all I can say. Bhagavan Tvadiya Charane Shraddhanata Namamaha Bhagavan Tvadiya Charane Shraddhanata Namamaha Shraddhanata Namamaha Shaktistadha cha bhaktihi sarveshu sampradiya lokasya asya mahataha sampadakastvameva vidina chakena isha Bhagavan tvamarchayamaha Bhagavan tvamarchayamaha Bhagavan tvadiya charani Shraddhanata namamaha Shraddhanata namamaha
I go back.
Jobless.
I don't know, can we sing a duet? Somebody sing. Sachin, I think, is referring to Sindhuja. Depending on how the audio quality is.
You should try. I'm just curious to see the voice blend.
Okay.
It
What you
blends
can do is go
beautifully.
line by line. So it's a line by line thing. You can't sing together. It won't fuse. Because
Probably, yes. Sindhu Sri Ramachandra?
Like this.
Yeah, you take the lead. I've been crying buckets for the last 1 hour, so I'm not sure how my voice will be.
Pitch? Do you remember the pitch?
Yeah, our pitch is actually 6 pancham, but if you're not
G sharp.
with that,
Yeah, G sharp.
Hey, let me hold on. Come on, video, please. I got to bring you on screen.
No, I'm very sorry, but video isn't working right now, so that is the only reason. Yeah. Okay. I'll just lend my voice. Yeah.
Super. Okay.
Shri Ramachandra, Jaya Ramachandra, Shri Ramachandra, Jaya Ramachandra, Raghuveera Ranadheera Raghukula Rama, Raghuveera Ranadheera Raghukula Rama, Shri Ramachandra, Jaya Ramachandra, Dasharatha Nandana Dayabhirama. Dasharatha Nandana Dayabhirama, Danava Bhanjana Kodanda Rama, Danava Kodanda Rama, Kalyana Rama Kamaniya Rama. रघुवीर रणधीर रघुकुल रामा
वीर रणधीर श्री साई रामा
श्री रामचंद्र जय रामचंद्र. One more interesting incident regarding this voice blending that we were talking about. So we used to sing together even on campus. So we used to have assembly bhajans. Anu, you remember? Early morning bhajans. And there also we would sing in pairs because it was also good practice when we had to sing Akhanda Bhajan and Mahashivaratri and all that. So my voice, if you would have noticed, is slightly softer than Sindhuja's voice. It's the way she's got a slightly heavier voice and more. So I remember the mic would be placed in front of me every time. Would be placed in front of me because the teacher used to say, her voice should be heard. Your voice will be heard without the mic, and I would feel so sorry for her. So I used to keep pushing the mic towards her. And then it was so gratifying. I remember during the Akhanda Bhajan and during the Shivaratri when we were given individual mics. But even there, I remember she was told, sit a little away from the mic. Don't sit so close to the mic. Your voice is not. But I mean, as a sister, I can't ask for anybody better because she's been there right through, and especially during that phase, even though she was technically not there at home because she was finishing out her final year. If she had not come down to visit me in that October of the 2001, my recovery could have taken much longer. Knowledge of the fact that this happened would have probably taken much longer. Again, everything, how beautifully Swami has made it happen it's incredible. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed when I think about, not sometimes, every time I'm overwhelmed when I think about how Swami is not just watching us, guiding every single move, even without our openly asking for it. We don't have to ask, we just have to be, Draupadi. I keep remembering that we have to be Draupadi, we have to let go, because if we don't do that, and I remember saying this whenever we converse with each other also, and with my parents, we always remember this, what Swami says: if you worry, I will not worry. If you worry, I will not worry, Swami says. So the minute I start thinking, okay, my daughter is not studying enough, or I've not planned my goals for the next week, or my client schedule for the next, immediately Swami says, if you worry, I will not worry. You just leave it to me. Why are you worrying? Why are you taking doership? Who are you in this, in this so-called drama? So he says, he is the ultimate thing. And in fact, as somebody who's in business, for any business owner, you don't need any guide other than Swami. Every single one of his discourses, sometimes I feel even without going or attending Swami's MBA program, I'm getting a crash course in MBA and management just by rereading Sathya Sai Speaks and all his discourses. And there is this beautiful thing about money, where he comes, money comes and goes, morality comes and grows. All these messages that I'm just thinking, nobody else would have that energy that as Swami has had. Think of the number of discourses he has given over the years. They're all like pearls of wisdom, gems of wisdom waiting for us to dive back into. And I don't have to buy a course in management. His words are always there and always enough.
So true. So true. And
just had to share that.
And the versatility of Bhagawan's discourse, whatever Bhagawan has taught us,
exactly.
It spans everything. There's nothing that you can leave out. There's
absolutely.
Nothing that escapes it. Yeah.
There is that beautiful quote. It's credited to this thinker called Lao Tzu. It says, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Yes. And every time I see that, I remember Swami coming in for darshan. When he comes slowly, just gliding through, and every step he takes is measured. It's intentional. It's deliberate. Nothing he does. And I remember my dad telling me this. He says, not even a blade of grass will move without without Swami willing it. And then he reminded me of that incident where a student of Swami asked, what do you mean? So I have free will, Swami, or as a student or a devotee. I'm getting it wrong. He says, Swami, I'm here. I can raise my hand. I can raise my hand right now and that doesn't need that doesn't need God. So Swami says, okay, now try raising your hand. And he was unable to raise his hand. He says, you can't even raise your hand without Swami willing it to happen. So it's, I mean, it's incredible.
So true.
One more point. I think we should put it on record for all those watching. More than both Sister Shailaja and Sindhuja's narration of their tough phases in life, I think especially when it comes to mental health, it's support system that we have. And one commonality that I see, many of us are Sai devotees, many of us are parents, but the parents' absolute surrender to Swami
True.
That is something so magnificent about the parents of Shailaja and Sindhuja.
I agree. True.
The fact that Sharanagati is something, I mean, Sakshat, I mean, there's nothing else to say. And a lot of us go through that in our lives in different phases, but it is the strength and the total surrender that helps us react, manage, or sometimes not react and manage.
I agree.
So that's very true, Anna, because that reminds me of this incident during that phase of mine. I remember this was in the height of that, the hallucinatory phase and all that. And we were having bhajans at home in my home in Bangalore. We had just come back from Parthi. We were having bhajans at home. And during the Aarti, I again had an episode. I had an episode where I lost control. And I got up and I said, I'm leaving the house. So you will remember what Sindhuja sister said, during her session also. And at that time, there was so much anger, in me. And I remember there was this coconut shell showpiece. It's basically, it's one of those fancy pieces. So when you open the shell, there'll be pictures of figurines of God inside. I think Ganesha, Shiva, Parvati, that kind of a thing. So I remember it was there on the table or in the showpiece or something, and I picked it up and I flung it across the room out of anger. Similarly, there was the dining chair. We were sitting in the hall. So dining chair, I overturned it and I broke it. I don't have that kind of superhuman strength. So I don't know how it's a wooden chair. It's a solid wooden chair. I actually broke one of the legs of it. Through all of this, my dad was actually very silent. He's always been that very calm and he didn't say anything. And my mom was generally calm. She was doing Aarti. She was doing Aarti when all this was happening. So the Aarti was there in one hand. And at that time, it was as if Swami had manifested in her, and she held up her hand. She held up her hand, and when that Swami, there is that incident of when the lady who was trying to go and adjust Swami's robes, and then he stopped her and he said, "Don't adjust it because she would have caught fire." So it was that same effect. So that stopped me for some reason. That immediately stopped me when she held up her hand and she did this, and being in that kind of absolute surrender, when a doctor is saying you can take care of her at home, but she would actually be better off in a facility. So there is a whole lot of responsibility you have to take on. I mean, it is incredible, that kind of surrender, especially as a parent, because as parents and as a parent now, I know how attached I am to my daughter, and I always tell this to others, as far as expectations go, I'm generally okay with expectations with everybody else. Only with my daughter, I still have that expectations. And she's watching this today. So even then, so Swami keeps reminding me, and it's incredible. It's amazing because this is so much that we
have. Devi Bhavani, his time is this.
Devi Bhavani. Okay.
Five
Panchama.
It's from the Mother Divine.
Yes, that's from the mother. So you can't say no to the mother.
Mother Divine, yeah.
And it's fitting that we end with mother, because I started with mother also. Devi Bhavani Jagat Janani, Devi Bhavani Jagat Janani, Mandahasini Anandadaini, मंदहासिनी आनंददायिनी देवी भवानी जगत जननी मंगलकारिणी कारुण्य रूपिणी मंगलकारिणी कारुण्य रूपिणी नारायणी देवी नारायणी नारायणी साई नारायणी महिषासुरमर्दिनी अम्बे भवानी महिषासुरमर्दिनी अम्बे भवानी देवी भवानी जगत जननी.
Beautiful, beautiful, so much. Thank you so much, Shailaja. And it's such a blissful evening. And thank you so much for giving us this strong, strong message from, I mean, you have been the medium, you're the messenger. Swami is giving us a strong, I mean, his message that there's nothing that this Divine Mother cannot heal. Ailments at any level, be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, at any level, he is here for us. She is here for us. With that, such a beautiful message from Bhagawan for us. Yeah, I would just one request for your blog address. Can you just tell us that before we?
So it's shailajav.com, shailajav.com. So I'll send it to you so you can probably put it in the description.
Definitely.
Shailaja, shailajav.com.
LA, there's an A missing and thing in there. Yeah.
Shailajav.
Yeah, and she writes beautifully. Just to give you a teaser. Yeah, she writes beautifully and she sends beautiful messages as well, heartfelt messages. So please go and check it out. Yeah. So we end this lovely blissful satsang with 21 Samastha Lokas.
Sister.
Yeah, sure,
brother. Yeah, I just wanted to say something. This thought that occurred to me is that in a normal environment, we say things are personal, right? We say this is personal to me. Yes. But I think sister has, from her example of bringing Swami to the forefront, has said that everything is open in Sai family fold. And it has taken so much, we will take so much of courage to open up on those things which we deem it as personal. But thank you so much, sister, for sharing it and reinforcing Swami in every walk of life. Unless you share these, we will not know. So tons of thanks, Saira.
So true. Yeah, so true. And within the Swami's fold, we're all safe. That's the best part, right? This is the safest net, the safest ground you can ever share. So with Swami, listening amidst us, and I'm sure he's nodding. He's nodding as well. And thank you so much for being with us, Shailaja. We'll end with 21 Samastha Lokas. We join as we pray together. Oh, Samastha Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. 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 Samastha समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु 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 ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी के जय।
Hi Ram, thank you very much. Have a safe week in contemplation of him in every moment of your lives. Looking forward to having you all next Sunday, same time. I have no idea who the speaker is. He knows. You shall know. Hi Ram.
Hi, Ram.